Hi guys, so let's do another RC. Again, we are at level 1. Things will get interesting as we move to level 2. So RC number 4. Let's start with making our one line pointers. The emergence of lab-grown meat has often been presented as a technological reason to environmental degradation, animal welfare, growing demand for protein, produced by cultivating animal cells rather than raising and slaughtering livestock. Cultured meat promises a future in which consumers can enjoy identical biological tissue without the ecological and ethical cost traditionally associated. Public debate has revolved around the question of safety, affordability, regulation. Yet these decisions may obscure a more fundamental issue. The greatest obstacle to lab grown meat may not be technological feasibility, but the instability it introduces into our understanding of authenticity. Wow. So the author is saying that mock meat is what it is called, is great for environment, but lacks authenticity. Right? This is majorly what the author has said. Authenticity is frequently mistaken for an objective property. We tend to assume that objects possess authenticity in the same way as they possess weight or chemical composition. Yet, it has been argued that it is rarely discovered, it is collectively assigned. A handwritten letter is better than a digital replica and is called authentic, as well as original painting is having a lot of cultural significance, or whether it is indistinguishable to other reproductions. Authenticity therefore reflects the narrative surrounding an object rather than its material constitution. Food has historically been no exception. Meal derives meaning not merely from its ingredients, but relationship and history and stories. Correct. Grandmother's recipe, locally grown produce, or a ritual of a festive feast often acquires a significance that extends beyond its nutritional value. Consequently, resistance to the lab grown meat may reveal less concerns about biology than the disruption of cultural continuity. The objection in many cases is not the cultured meat is chemically different, but the story is. Although identical, lacks culture, right? Advocates, so people who support, advocates frequently respond by arguing that consumers have repeatedly accepted innovation once considered unnatural. Pasteurization, genetically improved crops, even refrigeration was considered with suspicion before becoming mundane. Mundane. Now you don't know the meaning of mundane, but it is saying that it before becoming mundane features of modern life. So you can get an idea. Mundane means regular, day-to-day basis, but you get an idea that becoming features of modern life. So you can just ignore that word unless the question asks you to digress, to focus. Correct? Emphasize. This historical argument, however, may be less decisive than it appears. It assumes that technological resistance arises from ignorance, awaiting correction through familiarity. Such reasoning neglects the possibility that certain objectives are symbolic rather than empirical. We don't know empirical, let's just ignore. A person may acknowledge that cultured meat is safe, nutritious, environmentally beneficial, while still rejecting it because its production violates deeply held conceptions of what food ought to represent. So basically, people who support, they say that tech is always resisted first, but mock meat still violates what food represents. Basically, in terms of food, we are very choosy, and although every technology is new and every technology is first resisted then accepted, but in the terms of food, it's difficult that it will ever be accepted. Indeed, behavioral economists have observed that consumers routinely assign value to production independently of outcome. People willing to pay premium for handmade products than machine made, fair trade coffee, artisanal bread, handcrafted textiles often command higher prices precisely because consumers they perceive labor, locality, and tradition as integral components of value. If production methods influence economic preferences elsewhere, there is little reason to assume that food consumption should operate according to purely scientific criteria. So I again, behavioral economists. So basically, they're talking about that people love handmade and may reject meat, mock meat, due even though it is scientifically correct or scientifically same. People still may reject it because it's not culturally what it should be. The insight complicates a common assumption underlying technological optimism that increased knowledge necessarily transform public preference. Knowledge undoubtedly shapes choices, but it rarely replaces identity. Cultural practices frequently survive despite evidence of inefficiency because they serve social rather than instrumental purpose. Language persists despite more economically useful alternatives. Ceremonies endure despite lacking measurable productivity. To interpret every resistance as informal informational failure is therefore too misunderstood. All right. So basically, more information is not equals to behavioral change. Basically, it is just saying that even if you aware the people, they still might reject it. So it is not just about an awareness problem or something that will catch up with people as they get more aware. Debate surrounding lab grown meat may consequently reveal less about biotechnology than modernity itself. Industrial societies have increasingly interpreted progress as a replacement of inherited traditions with technically superior alternatives. Yet, not all human values are reducible to efficiency. Communities often preserve customs precisely because they embody continuity rather than optimization. Whether cultured meat eventually becomes widespread will therefore depend not only upon scientific advances but also upon whether society come to redefine authenticity itself from fidelity to origins towards fidelity to outcomes. From fidelity to origins towards fidelity to outcome. Fidelity basically means having like a loyalty, fidelity. But then again, overall, it is saying that even if lab grown meat may be efficient, but still not accepted. I think that's what the this entire paragraph is saying, that even though because communities they work on a very different angle, they do not care about optimization, but they rather care about preservation of their old beliefs. Last paragraph or last, like, it's a very small paragraph but still important. Ironically, if that transition occurs, lab grown meat will not merely change what people eat, it may transform the criteria by which society distinguish natural from artificial, the genuine from synthetic, and ultimately tradition from innovation. So finally, if society exists, except the author doesn't know, and author is saying that if he's also doubtful that it might be, although author is saying that they will never accept mock meat, but he's saying if they accept, then it's a big deal because it's a big change in the society. That's what it is saying. So basically, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. Now let's go. Which of the following best captures the central argument? All right. Centrally, if you yourself think about it, it's basically saying that mock meat is very good for the environment, very good for all the factors, but still people will not accept it because it is not, although it is biologically same, but it is not culturally same. It does not get accepted because of the way it is made and not because of what it is. Consumer resistance to lab grown meat primarily reflects insufficient scientific literacy. So it's not about knowledge. So A is definitely wrong, right? Now, their acceptance of lab grown meat depends on much on evolving cultural conceptions of authenticity as on technological success. Yeah, B is definitely looks very correct. Environmental concerns alone will eventually compel society. See, environmental concerns alone, that is like such a superlative statement, like only environmental concerns are important, which is exactly what the author is not at all arguing, right? So environmental concerns alone will eventually compel societies. No. Authenticity is an objective characteristic determined entirely by biological, again, entirely by biological composition, again, superlative statement, that it only and only gets determined by biological consumption. No, it is more about culture. It is more about what it represents. So definitely option number B. Which one of the following assumption is most essential to author's argument? So which is actually supporting the author's argument? Cultural values can influence consumer behavior independently of objective product characteristics. A looks so damn correct, right? Because cultural values can influence consumer behavior independent of what the object is. Even though the meat is exactly same biologically like a mock meat, but mock meat is same like original meat, but still culturally it is not accepted. Lab grown meat will eventually become cheaper. It is never about the price. So people are ready to pay premium if the product is genuine, genuinely, culturally, traditionally made. Consumers generally possess limited knowledge. It was never about knowledge. Government are likely to regulate cultural meat differently. It's not about regulation, it's about people preference. So definitely A. Then question number 3. Which of the following, if true, would most likely weaken the author's position? So which is against what the author is saying? Blind taste tests consistently show consumers cannot distinguish meat from original. Wow. This looks correct. This looks like something that really tells that people can't even tell the taste. But they don't care about the taste. They are beyond taste. They actually care where does it come from. So A is incorrect because people don't care about the taste. They care about more things. Countries with widespread adoption of lab grown meat continue to attach cultural significance to traditional food while consuming cultured meat in everyday context. Okay. Wow. So the author was saying that it will never happen because people will never accept it. But if B is true, if people are eating it, but at the same time still keeping cultural significance to original meat, like having it in festivals, but on a daily day-to-day basis for health reasons or for availability reasons or for affordability reasons, they are consuming. So yes, it is weakening the author's argument. The author's tension was that it is 0 or 1. Either people will accept or not accept culturally. But here people have accepted, at the same time not rejected original meat. Cultured meat production reduces greenhouse gas. It was never about greenhouse gas. It was never about anything else but the originality, the cultural significance. Younger consumers express greater willingness to experiment with novel foods than older consumers. This also looks correct. Younger consumers express greater willingness. Yeah, so if a subsection of a society is accepting, society at large is not accepting. So it is never about a generation or a certain country or a certain section. So I will go with B, correct? Because that looks damn correct because it breaks the entire logic behind the debate because people are not debating. They have accepted mock meat and they have accepted that it can never match original meat. Finally, the authors most likely agree with which of the following statements? Scientific evidence is generally sufficient to eliminate. Now, it is not a superlative statement, it is saying generally sufficient. Had it said scientific evidence is always sufficient, I would have rejected it then and there. Most of the time, 90% of the time, superlative statements are not true. And this is what you have to figure out with practice. Scientific evidence is generally sufficient to eliminate cultural resistance towards new. No, because even if scientists tell us that it is end to end duplicate of original meat, still it is not original and you will never consider it as genuine. Traditions survive primarily because they maximize economic efficiency. No, it was never about the money, has been said so many times. Technological innovation often challenges symbolic system before it challenges material practice. Traditional innovation often challenge symbolic before challenging material practice. Yeah, this looks correct. That any technological innovation, it often challenges the symbolic system. For example, when fridge came, this is just some example to make you understand that people who were refrigerating using traditional methods are seeing it as something that uses electricity, is not good for the environment, not good for the food. But then now it is widespread, it is accepted everywhere because of the convenience. So technological innovation often challenges, not a superlative statement, symbolic system before challenges material practice, like culture over practicality. So C looks correct. Let's go with D. Authenticity should ultimately be defined by measuring biological similarity rather than inherited customs. So again, it is completely opposite of what the author is saying. Authenticity should ultimately be defined by biological symmetry. No, biologically symmetrical, it was already similar, it was, but then still they're not accepting. So definitely C. So that makes it B A B C. Let's just quickly check. B A B and then C. So I hope this helps and you learned something new today. And now eventually we will move to level 2 soon, but there are a few level 1 more which we will complete in the following videos.